Our next team is Penn State and Pat Chambers, and this is a fascinating team. They make it into the NIT last year. They were a bubble team, just didn't have enough quality big wins last season. They go on and win the whole NIT, and as we all know, that's not the tournament you want to win. What does that do for this team returning this year, though?
It creates, you want more of that, meaning the feeling of winning and having your team play deep into the postseason. They lose the conference's leading scorer in Tony Carr, but it's kind of a similar situation to what we just described with Rutgers, Mike, and this fact is that the ball really stuck a lot of times with Tony Carr, most times to the benefit of the Nittany Lions, but this is a team, unlike Rutgers, that returns a lot of other high-caliber players. Guys like Lamar Stevens, who was the NIT most valuable player last year, Josh Reeves, who I think is going to have a breakout year offensively, leading the conference in steals the last 2 years, and then you have Mike Watkins inside, who shot around 68-69% from the floor and blocks a lot of shots. There's a lot to like about Penn State, and a lot of people are kind of marking them down because of the absence of Tony Carr. I think this is a team that will be knocking on the NCAA tournament door. I really believe that, with not just the amount of offensive firepower that they have coming back, but the fact that these guys are a little bit more experienced than they have been in the past.
I'm a little surprised how quiet these three good players for Penn State are. I mean, you mentioned Watkins, #1 in the league in field goal percentage, #2 in rebounding. Reeves is great at steals, and then their biggest name is Lamar Stevens. That's a really solid 1, 2, 3.
And you'll have a true point guard. You know, Tony Carr was a guy that could distribute the basketball, but he was known for his scoring. They'll be able to plug in a guy, and they're going to lose a lot offensively from this point guard position in the form of Tony Carr. But Jamari Wheeler has a chance to really make an impact on this team, not just defensively, but his ability to distribute the ball.
26 wins last season. That was the most under Pat Chambers, and the second most in a season in Penn State history.
Penn State basketball definitely climbed last year. I feel like the players feel it. There's great momentum for us. The fans feel it, as evidence to our season ticket sales right now are skyrocketing, which is fantastic. But we're definitely climbing, and we're climbing in the right direction. And I think that's why there's so much optimism surrounding our program right now. I think we see it in recruiting, and I think basketball people, the Big Ten Conference, sees it as well. We're returning 3 fantastic players. I think our front line can go against anybody in the country. I mean, these guys need to build, though, off that 26-win season last year. Cutting down the nets at MSG. We broke 51 records last year. So really exciting stuff for Penn State basketball. Led by Josh Reeves, all-defensive team last year. Mike Watkins, all-defensive team last year. Lamar Stevens, most outstanding player in the NIT. Honorable mention, all Big Ten. So you got 3 veterans right there who've logged a lot of minutes. You add in Big John Hara, who helped us to a 7-1 record at the starting position, and that's a front line to be reckoned with. You throw Jamari Wheeler in there. Again, that NIT run was a valuable experience for these guys. All right, a ton of minutes to educate them so they can learn how hard it is to be successful in this league. You marry that with this great young freshman class that we have. Really skilled, really talented, high IQs, really shoot the basketball. There's great optimism for Penn State basketball, which leads us to our schedule. Our non-conference schedule is going to be the most difficult that we've had in my tenure. We're hoping that non-conference schedule prepares us for the 20-game slate that the Big Ten now has us playing. That will put us in position to get that NCAA tournament berth, and that's the goal. Make no mistake about it. That is the next step in our process. The next step, or in our climb, is to get to that NCAA tournament.
Thank you, Coach. We'll open the floor for questions. We have front row here on our left.
Hey, Coach. Rob McCauley, Illini Report.
Hey, Rob. How you doing, buddy?
Not bad. You said the season tickets are spiking, and because Bryce Jordan has always been the quietest arena in the Big Ten, That's the challenge you've had to face. Do you have any numbers that you're willing to share with us at this point?
So I'll share some numbers from last year with you. The last 5 games of the year, we averaged close to 11,500 fans. It really became a home court advantage for us. In Madison Square Garden, our numbers were huge as far as Rutgers and Penn State really filling MSG. And then for the championship game, we had 11,500, most since 2005. So I think Penn State fans want good basketball. They're craving good basketball. And I think they're sensing an incredible buzz about what we're doing. And with the guys that we have coming back, I think that's why you see a great spike in our ticket sales.
Second row here on our right.
Adam Jardy with the Columbus Dispatch. You said you got to keep climbing. You got to take that next step to get from NIT championship, NCAA tournament. With losing a guy like Tony Carr and some of the roster decisions you've had to make, what's it going to take? What do you think you have in place besides that front court that's going to get you to that next step to the tournament?
Yeah, Tony Carr was a great player. I mean, you're never replacing a kid like Tony Carr. He was our first draft choice since 1999, and he's doing terrific. But it's got to be a collective effort led by Lamar, Josh, and Mike. We have great leaders this year, coupled with a lot of talent. So the next step for us is defending a little bit better, rebounding a little bit better, doing the little things just a little bit better and more consistently. I think if we get more consistency from our front line and our veterans, I think the younger guys are going to follow suit. One advantage that we have is when Lamar, Tony, and that great group came in, I don't know if we had the leadership. This year we have the leadership. And that should pull us through, especially in tough times, especially on the road at the Big Ten, when the venues are very difficult to play in.
Any more questions for Coach?
Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News.
Good to see you, Mike.
Good to see you, Pat. You talked about replacing Tony from a standpoint of leadership and that sort of thing, but how about positionally what you guys do in the backcourt?
Right now, Jamari Willer's playing great basketball. I think you remember him from last year. He shot out of a cannon. Great defender. Also really good at managing the team right now. Really bringing those freshman guards along. Setting the table for Josh, Lamar, and Mike to be successful on the offensive end. So as long as he continues on that path, I think he's got a great chance to do something special for us, to lead us. Couple that with Rasir Bolton, Miles Dredd, Myrion Jones, really talented freshmen that can score the basketball, high IQs, can score off the bounce. You add those 4 guys together, I think they're not going to average 19, one guy, but I think collectively we can get anywhere from 20 to 25 points out of those guys. And so that's the goal for them. I don't want to put a lot of pressure on them, which is another advantage. You know, when Tony came in, there was a lot of pressure on him. I gave him the ball from the start. But now you have 4 guys that can really handle business, and Jamari got great experience last year to be able to pass down to these younger guys.
Coach Chambers, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Again, 3 10-plus point scorers on the team last year returning this season.
Yeah, there's a lot to like, especially in the form of Lamar Stevens. He's one of the most difficult matchups in the league because of his ability to back you in. He's strong, can play through contact, can play at that mid or high post, and has become a much more proficient three-point shooter. So he's going to be an extremely difficult matchup, comes in with a great deal of confidence. Mike Watkins, you mentioned it, as an outstanding field goal percentage. You'd like to see him become a little bit more assertive on the offensive end. And a guy that I think has continued to be underrated during his tenure in State College is Josh Reeves. He became a double-digit scorer last year, but his ability to impact the game, not just offensively, which continues to grow, but defensively has been phenomenal. Led the league in steals the last 2 years. That's a reason that Penn State led the conference in that category a year ago. But it's his versatility on the defensive end, not just in terms of hopping in the passing lanes and creating havoc that way, but his ability to guard multiple positions in that length. This is a team I really like, and you heard Coach Chambers talk about it. John Harrar is a guy that they can bring in now off the bench and provide a physical presence. This is a team at times became a little bit more finesse than we've been accustomed to seeing from Penn State. John Harrar certainly puts that to the side. He was a guy that was originally recruited to play football at Army, and he comes into the ball game with all the subtlety of a 2x4 to the head, and sometimes that's exactly what you need.
This is a team that's now won the NIT twice in the last decade. Seems like Coach Chambers was saying the NCAA tournament. That is their goal this season.
Yeah, they let some games slip away in the conference slate. The game at Northwestern last year really came back to haunt them a little bit. But with the addition of the 2 conference games, that'll allow them 2 more opportunities to get wins against quality opponents. And then they really upgraded their non-conference slate. They were at a point a few years ago where they just needed to get wins, and they scheduled accordingly. Now, as you know, I don't care whether they call it the RPI, the BMI, whatever you want to call it, it all comes down to 3 things. Who'd you play?
Right.
Where'd you play them? How'd you do? I don't need to be in NASA to figure that out. And he's taking care of those things. Now they just have to go out and execute that game plan because they're in a much different place now than they were 4 years ago.
To be clear,